My name is Pastor Eric Shafer. I'm the senior pastor here at Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Santa Monica, California, and this is Hope Matters. Hope Matters is a weekly program produced by our congregation where we talk to interesting people from around the USA and even around the world about the theme of hope, because we believe we have a God of hope. Our guest today is a well-known author and consultant, Rozella Haydée White from Houston, Texas. And Rozella, as I looked at your background, it said you were a theologian, a spiritual life coach, a leadership consultant, an inspirational speaker, and a writer. I almost got out of breath reading those things. Some of the people watching this have read your book and know a little bit about you, but probably most don't. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor Shafer, for having me on and for the ministry of your community and congregation. So my name is Rozella, and I always have to correct people only because I hear my grandmother's voice. So my name is Rozella Haydée White. I am the granddaughter of Rozella, who was the granddaughter of sharecroppers from a small town called Cape Run, Virginia, who migrated up to New York. And then also the granddaughter of Haydée Gisela, who was the daughter of immigrants from Jamaica, Panama, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. And so my name is the name of my ancestors, right? I literally was birthed in this world on their shoulders. And so my name is something that I have so much pride in and also love to share a little bit of background about.
That's wonderful. You are a global person by heritage.
And that is the thing, right? Like, as I started to actually dig down into my story of my ancestry, of my lineage, and started to recognize themes in the lives of especially the women in my family, it became clear as to why I am concerned with the things I'm concerned about, why I do the things that I do, and why I've been called to engage in the world in a particular way. So I am a spiritual life coach, and so I offer spiritual life coaching, which is basically, I like to talk about a combination of spiritual direction and coaching, but very much from a non-white-centered view or frame. So most of my coaching is about deconstruction, dismantling, and decolonizing the way that we think about ourselves, about others, and ultimately about the world. I also am a leadership coach and consultant where I work mainly in the nonprofit sector, helping teams, boards, leaders align their vision and values with their beliefs and their behaviors. So alignment is critical and crucial to the work that I do. And I create. I love to create content, whether it's books, whether it's helping a dear friend of mine who has a video production company and producing stories that matter, whether it's creating opportunities for people to gather together, to engage in life-giving conversations. All of these things are a part of who I am. And I talk about my business, which is RHW Consulting LLC, as the business that's focused on restoring hearts to wholeness so all can thrive. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Wonderful. I love it. You have the elevator speech down really well. You have a book that's still new. So tell us a little bit about your book, which is called Love Big, The Power of Revolutionary Relationships to Heal the World.
Absolutely. So this is my book. This is it right here. Love Big. That's me. And it was published by Fortress Press, now Broadleaf Press. And it was published in May of 2019. So I just celebrated the year anniversary of it. But I knew that the first thing that I wrote on my own, because I've done curriculums, I've done articles or contributions to other books, I wanted my first book to be about the thing that matters most to me. And that thing is love. And I've always been a romantic. Some would say that I've been naively so. But when I talk about being a romantic, I'm not just talking about intimate, personal relationships with a romantic partner. What I'm talking about when I talk about being romantic is actually being someone who is in love with God. And I believe that God is love, and we know that that love exists because in God we see creativity, we see liberation, and we see sustenance for our holistic being, and ultimately for the world. And so I wanted this book to be an exploration of love from that vantage point. How do we actually build what is called often a love ethic? But also to dive into some of the ways that we live that out, namely with ourselves, because one of the things that many of us recognize, even as we can quote the great commandment, what does the Lord require of you, but to, oh, I'm sorry. I just went to the old text, but what is the greatest commandment? First, to love the Lord your God with your whole being. And then the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And we often leave off the as yourself. And one of the things that I'm fairly passionate about is helping people understand that that as yourself piece is crucial to loving others. So the book looks at both love of God, the way that God loves us, love of self, and then love in our relationships. And the tagline for the book is the power of revolutionary relationships to heal the world, because each of those relationships can be revolutionary. The relationship we have with God, the relationship we have with ourselves, and the relationship we have with each other. And I believe that love really can change the world.
Wonderful. And I like Micah 6 too, so there we are.
And that's my tattoo on this arm, justice, mercy, human. So it's like, those are the two things that are always in my mind.
Thank you. So what are you hearing from people that are reading the book? Are they reading it in groups? Are they using it in church groups as a study book? How are they using the book?
Yeah, so for sure, people have been using it as part of book studies, which I love when groups get together. And I did do a study guide to accompany the book, and that's free and available on my website. But people are using it in groups. So I've been able to, before COVID, be with some groups in person, and now having some conversations with groups virtually, which I love to do because I love group process and facilitation. There's also a lot of people who are reading it individually and have responded to me that it is an intensely devotional and spiritual practice for them, because I invite a lot of reflection. I am first and foremost, I would say, a healer with a coach leaning, right? And so my goal is to always invite people to explore what their healing looks like, could be, and if they're on the journey, to provide resources that continue to nurture them. And if they haven't started that journey, to invite them into that. So the book has some stories, it has my own thoughts about any number of things, and it has questions, and it invites the reader to really do some deep reflective work as they come to understand how they thought about love, how they've cared for or not themselves, and how they engage in revolutionary relationships with others.
Wonderful. So if someone wants to get the book, they can get it through Amazon, of course, but it would help Augsburg Fortress if they bought it from Augsburg Fortress. Can they also buy it through your website?
So on my website, it will send them to the different places, right? So the book can be bought wherever books are sold. If it's not in stock, it can be requested. And just because it's part of who I am, if you are someone looking to buy books, I always invite you to go to your favorite local bookstore, because local bookstores are just amazing. And they're a lot of times they're rooted in their community. So I would encourage people to go to their local bookstores, or if you don't know of one in your area, you can do Indie Bound, INDIE Bound, and that will kind of be a clearinghouse for independent bookstores. And then the other thing is, if you know of bookstores that are owned by Black, Indigenous people of color, BIPOCs, then support them as well. So wherever you want to get the book, you can get it.
All right, hold it up once again for us, would you please?
Yes. And this is it. Love Big, the power of revolutionary relationships to heal the world. And my dear friend and sister, the Reverend Nadia Bowles-Weber, did the foreword for it. And so I'm just so excited about this little book, and hopefully the impact that it has on the people that experience it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Well, yeah, hopefully lots of people will want to look at the book after this interview. So that's great.
Thank you.
So the title of the program is Hope Matters. And how does hope matter in your life? So.
Wow. It's interesting because I feel like I have to answer that in two ways, right? Kind of the larger way, the overarching way, and then the present day way, right? So the overarching way, I would say that hope is a non-negotiable for me. And the reason I say that is because I take very seriously the lineage and ancestry that I am a part of. So again, I am on one side of my family, the daughter of people that came out of slavery in the American South. On the other side of my family, the daughter of people who were enslaved in the Caribbean, but also were migrants to this country, this new land, people who didn't necessarily speak English as their first language. And so both of those parts of my history remind me that the fact that I'm sitting here right now talking to you, engaging with your audience, that there were people who lived and ultimately died, right, for the freedoms that I have, for the way of being that I can now embody, and for the justice that flows through my veins. And so hope matters for me because it's a non-negotiable, because my ancestors had hope, right? And they had hope in the midst of situations I could not fathom, right? They had hope as people who were enslaved. They had hope as people who went through Jim Crow. They had hope as people, especially women, who still fought for their rights as Black and Latinx women, who were not afforded the same rights as white women, even when suffragist movements happened. And so these are the people that make up my story. So I don't think I have a choice but to be hopeful, because my history has shown me that actually anything is possible. And I come from a family that is deeply entrenched, both in Christian faith, but also in indigenous practice, right? So on my father's side, my paternal side, that side of my family was again out of the American South, holiness, Pentecostal, ultimately becoming Baptist later in life. On my mother's side, there's a mix of people that were practicing Santeria and religious traditions that were migrated over when slaves came from West Africa, and the Catholic Church, right? And those two things formed to create this incredible connection of faith and spirituality and cultural connection. And that side of my family, ultimately, as they came to the United States and first ended up in Spanish Harlem, became Lutheran. So I often say third generation Lutheran, because my grandmother, my mother, and I were all baptized in, confirmed in, and raised in the Lutheran Church.
Which congregation was it?
So my grandmother was baptized at Transfiguration Lutheran in Harlem. And then my mom, I can't remember what it was called before because it's where I was baptized too, but New Hope in Jamaica, Queens was where both me, my mom, and my brother were baptized. And so that was our congregation until we moved home, or we moved to Texas when I was 6. And then I was a part of Augustana Lutheran Church here in Houston.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the longtime pastor at Transfiguration.
Was it Featherstone? No. Not Rudy Featherstone.
Well, whatever. It's a, old age. What can we say? So people like you and me can be pretty discouraged right now with what's going on in our country. And how do we offer hope, especially to African Americans and Latinos, but also to those that are just disgusted with the way politics is today? What can we say to people that are just saying, I'm losing it, I'm losing hope, I'm losing confidence in any system? That's a tough question. I get it. I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely. And I would say a large part of my client base are white folks, right? White people, and that people are really struggling right now with that exact question. How do I have hope in the midst of not just suffering, but confusion and chaos and just unknown, right? There's just all of this unknown, and we're not necessarily in a space where many of us believe that we have leaders that are helping guide us on this path of the unknown. And so that leads us to despair. I think on the one hand, again, because of the way I talk about my history and lineage, I believe that one of the invitations for us, both as people of faith, but especially as white folks, is to get back in touch with the long view, right? With the stories of your own family, with the stories of our history. And not to say that that then makes what we're experiencing less or shrinks it, but the reality is that when we're able to take a step back, or in the words of some leadership folks, like go onto the balcony, right? To kind of get to see what the landscape is, we start to recognize that this is a moment in time. It's not the only moment in time. It's not the end of the story. It's a moment in time. And we have the benefit of hindsight, right? We have the benefit of going from the beginning of our story of people of faith to this moment, seeing people struggle and wander in the wilderness, seeing people struggle as it relates to engaging oppressive forces, seeing people struggle as it relates to fighting for freedom and liberation and justice, right? So we get to see that, but I think there are two things that stand in the way of that. One is, for those of us who are from the United States, born and raised in the United States, this is my home. This is the country I'm a part of. I don't really know any other place. I've traveled all over the world, but ultimately the U.S. is home, right? And one of the reasons I critique her so much is because I love her so much. You know, James Baldwin used to say that. We critique the things that we love, but on the one hand, I think that we struggle with the long view, partially because our country is fairly new. We are not a country like countries in Europe or countries east of Europe, right? We are a country that is fairly new, but I don't think we ever think about that. And secondly, because we are such a highly individualized society, we don't often think about the collective experience. So I believe that when we take a moment to step back, to get in touch with our histories, both as a country and as individuals, look at our family stories and look at our ancestry and lineage of faith, it starts to give us wisdom and share with us a way of being for such a time as this. We are invited to then think about, what is the manna from heaven that we're being offered, right? Who are the people in our midst that are actually helping to push us forward, right? What are the things that we are being asked to let go of because we're traversing this wilderness and we can't bring all the stuff that was before, right? As we engage in this unknown future. And ultimately, what are the practices that Spirit, the divine, God, the creator, is inviting us to engage regularly, daily, to continue to open us up to the wisdom that's swirling all around and within us.
Very good. Your first part reminded me of the MLK quote, right? The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
Absolutely. And I have to believe that partially, again, because I'm sitting here, a Black Puerto Rican woman, for the most part, enjoying freedoms that people in my life never could have imagined. Now, do we still have a long way to go? Absolutely. Is there still significant injustice? Yes. And, right, I'm a part of a moment in time. We're a part of a moment in time.
And I have the hope that the sacrifices of a number of individual Black people recently at the hands of the police are a tipping point for at least some white people. Mm. You know, there's evidence of that, as you know. I'm a hopeful. I mean, you know, that's been enough of a tipping point that things will actually change.
And my background is, you know, my undergrad background and kind of the way that I was trained is sociology, right? And so learning about movements, learning about collective behavior, learning about that which informs culture. And so you're right, that language of tipping point, you need X amount of experiences and people having the shared experience that then lead to us kind of coming over the hump. And I would like to believe that we're in that time of coming over the hump.
I guess that kind of wraps the hope question, doesn't it? We're both hopeful that we're in that time, and you know, that the society and the church and all of our institutions are at that point in that time, and that's our hope. Well, thank you for this time, Rozella. I'm so pleased that you could be with us today, and you know, share some hopeful conversation. Because you know, you are a gift to our church, my friend. Thank you, and to the world. You know, I hope our viewers will take a look at Rozella's book. And you know, and how can people reach? If people want to reach out to you by email, how can they do that?
Yes. So you can send me a note at info at rozellahwhite.com. And again, my website is a wealth of resource, both about Love Big Book, my racial justice initiatives, and also anything dealing with my consulting services. And that's rozellahwhite.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at RozellaHW. And then Instagram and Twitter at RozellaHW and Facebook at Rozella H. White. And I'm the Love Big Coach.
All right, thank you very much to Rozella H. White, our guest today on Hope Matters. And thank you all for joining us again today. I am Pastor Eric Shafer, the senior pastor at Mount Olive Lutheran Church. We produce this weekly program because we believe hope matters, and we believe we have a God of hope. Thank you for joining us.